We're being joined here momentarily with a larger group today, which is excellent. I don't have the run show, but that's okay. I got a general sense. I think I know everybody, hopefully. Well, excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. End of week one of the session. We have been busy and hard at work, and things have been off to a strong start, focusing on the issues that matter most for Marylanders. I think everyone is thinking quite a bit about the snowstorm that's coming. The emergency preparedness announcement had been made yesterday by the governor's office. We're all watching it very closely. We'll be monitoring it. Nothing to report yet, but certainly stay tuned this weekend if there are any changes for our logistics as we move forward. I do want to thank the Senate leadership who is joining us here today. You all know them very well. It is through their work and leadership that we are able to be so successful in the Senate. And so I'm so pleased to be joined by the chair of the Finance Committee, Senator Bidel, chair of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee, Senator Feldman, the vice chair of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, Jeff Waldstreicher, also our Senate President Pro Tem, Malcolm Augustine, our Majority Leader, Nancy King, and Senate Democratic Caucus Chair, and importantly, our Capital Budget Committee Chair, Senator Craig Zucker, who are here today and will be speaking to you. I'm going to leave a lot of it to them. They're each going to highlight a few issues that are critical for us. But I do want to just mention on the budget very briefly. Of course, the governor introduced a balanced budget on Wednesday, and it is, importantly, I think was done in a thoughtful manner. It does not include any fees or taxes, eliminates the structural $1.4 billion shortfall, meets all of the Spending Affordability Committee's requirements, and maintains 8% in the rainy day fund. We know that ultimately the operating expenses are reduced between FY26 and 27 by $154 million. And I think that's an important statistic to note, is that where there are flexible dollars, the actual dollar amount goes down from last year's budget to this year's budget. We are, of course, going to have our review and go into the details, and I'm sure there will be some things that we move around and adjust and negotiate between the chambers and with the governor, but I think we're off to a very strong start when it comes to the budget. With that, I'm going to pause there because we have members of leadership who are here with us, and I want to make sure that they are able to highlight the things that we're working on. Across all the committees, what's clear is that they are starting the ground running, focusing on healthcare, on energy issues, on our balanced budget, on making sure that our elections are secure and stable. While the rest of the world is a bit crazy, while the federal government is uncertain and unstable, here in the Senate of Maryland, we hope to be the model of stability. And so with that, I'd like to hand it over to Senate President Pro Tem Malcolm Augustine.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Senate President Ferguson, and thanks you all for being here. Welcome back to Annapolis. We're definitely, we're here to do the people's work, and we're grateful for you all being here to talk to us a little bit about that. There are three things that we have talked about consistently being important to us. Those are growth, affordability, and protecting against Trump and the Trump administration. And we have several pieces of legislation that fall into those categories, but I'm going to focus on one, which is a part of the protecting against Trump. And so yesterday, I testified in the Judicial Proceedings Committee on Senate Bill 1. And this is a piece of legislation that we find to be absolutely critical right now in Maryland. It's a perilous time right now for us right now as it relates to federal law enforcement, and many of us can see that trust and credibility are beginning to really, really slip away. So what this legislation does is it seeks to help restore some of that trust and credibility between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Distrust and fear are not elements of a better life. They're not what we seek when we want to achieve a better life for all of our Marylanders, which is so critical to all of us. Many other, as I believe that transparency builds trust in our communities, and I think that that's an essential element of Senate Bill 1. What Senate Bill 1 does is it bans the use of masks as a default, and as it relates to wearing them when you are doing normal service for law enforcement across the board. And that's for everybody. That's for local, that's for state, anyone that is operating as law enforcement in our state, that we would ban the policy of wearing masks. That should be the default. And it is not mandatory right now at any level and anywhere, including at the federal level. So we just want to make sure that in our state, we are making sure that those face coverings are not there, so that our people will feel far more trusting of law enforcement. Now, this is just a very, very critical element that aligns with our values and really does protect the communities that we serve. And every Marylander really should feel better about the way that they are interacting with law enforcement. Law enforcement has worked very hard, our local and state law enforcement has worked very hard to continue to build trust with our communities, and it really is being eroded. And so we think that this piece of legislation is extremely important to help us rebuild that. And it really is simply about basic human dignity. I mean, some of the things that we have been seeing that are occurring in our neighborhoods where we live, as it relates to the interaction between ICE and these masked agents and our community, really are just a real challenge for us to even have to think about that for families that we serve and who are our neighbors and that we live with. And so this will remain very much a top priority as we continue to discuss and finalize this piece of legislation over the next week. And I'll look forward to talking to you all about that in the coming days and weeks. With that, I will turn it over to our Majority Leader, Nancy King.
Thank you, Senator Augustine. And good morning to all of you, and thank you for being here for, I guess this is our first big press conference of the year. I'm honored to serve again this year for the 7th year in a row as the Senate Majority Leader. And I want to outline a little bit the approach the Senate of Maryland will take in the 2026 legislative session. As always, the Senate will conduct its work with integrity, thoughtfulness, and collaboration. And we are committed to ensuring that all voices are heard throughout the legislative process. One of the things I love about being in the Senate is that, and I often think that Capitol Hill should take a page out of our book, is that we all really, we blend our parties together. We do bills with the opposite party. We go out to dinner, we work on things together. And if you look at the votes that come out of the Senate, probably 98% of what we vote on is bipartisan. So, and I'm really proud of that, of being able for us to work together. Our fundamental responsibility is to address Maryland's problems regardless of partisan lines or geographical locations. And our work spans every corner of the state, from the Eastern Shore to Western Maryland, from Hertford County to Charles County. As our committee chairs will discuss in a few minutes, bill hearings and budget hearings will reflect a wide range of perspectives and issues, and the Senate will come together to address the most pressing issues facing our state. The same with working on our budget. We will all come together on that and have a balanced budget by the end of session. As the Senate President said in his opening day remarks, the Senate has a long history of disagreeing without being disagreeable, and our makeup is such that we will continue being that way. That approach will continue in the 2026 legislative session, even as we take on difficult and potentially contentious issues, and we look forward to working with our colleagues in the House of Delegates and the administration. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Chair of the Committee on Education, Energy, and the Environment, Senator Brian Feldman.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. I always like to start by reminding everybody how broad the jurisdiction of the EEE Committee is. And by the way, I just have to say it, we lost Senator Augustine, but it's a big loss. We're gonna have to make up in some other shape. Yes. So the committee has jurisdiction. Let me just say, it's education policy, it's in the title, but it's K through 12 and higher ed. It's energy policy, it's environment, data centers, AI-related issues, affordable housing, agriculture, election law. And so each of the last 2 years, we've had more bills in the EEE committee than any other committee in the entire General Assembly. It's shaping up to be the same this year. If you look at the bill counts already, we're about 115 bills, about 20, 25 more bills than any other committee in the General Assembly. We're gonna be sharing, we've had the restructuring in the House of Delegates. 6 of the 7 House committees will have bills that we overlap with the EEE committee, so it's gonna be big. Busy on multiple respects. We started bill hearings this week. We started with hearings on election law bills, including How do we fill legislative vacancies was kind of a hot topic. That was one of the bills that has passed the Senate 2 consecutive years. It's got stalled in the House. Hopefully, again, there's been a shift in jurisdiction over in the House. Hopefully this year will be the year that happens. As far as briefings, we had, I think, a pretty significant briefing this week dealing with the implications of all the changes in federal policy when it comes to energy. And what does it mean for Maryland? Next week, we're going to be ratcheting up the bill hearings. Natural resources, higher ed, environmental bills will all be heard next week. Finally, let me just say, beyond the budget, I do think that one of the hottest issues in the United States right now is energy policy. So let me just say a few words about that. I do chair a national task force on that topic. Senator Augustine has participated in that task force. Every state in the nation, I just want to emphasize, every state in the nation is dealing with the same set of issues where demand for energy is going up, it's data centers, et cetera, and supply of energy is not keeping pace. And so every state is dealing with the issues, but ultimately it's about making sure that the costs associated with all that low growth are not being stuck on our ratepayers. That's going to be a theme this session. I think it's going to be a theme for the next several years. We did a lot of important pieces of legislation last year in the energy space, but there's already a lot of activity this year. First of all, I have to say we have a lot of new players. We have a new chair of our Public Service Commission, Chair Barve. We have a new Maryland Energy Administration director. We've got new committee jurisdiction. Chair Corman and that committee will now have jurisdiction over energy policy. So we have a lot of new players. But I do want to also make the point that nationally, there are a lot of players in this space. We have the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We have our PJM 13-state grid operator that we're one of 13 states. They're relevant. We've got the Public Service Commission I just mentioned. We've got the Public Service Commission and PJM, the third. So there's a lot of players. So for us to kind of tackle this, it's not just one bill, short-term fix. We've got a lot of folks that all have to be on the same page. And then the White House, I guess I'll make that point. The governor went to the White House just last week, signed an agreement with several other PJM governors outlining a coordinated strategy among states to incentivize new generation of energy, protect residential customers from price increases, ensure that data centers pay their fair share. The governor has his own bill. He hasn't dropped it yet. We haven't seen it yet that I anticipate will be rolled out in the next week, dealing with the deployment of shovel-ready projects, grid enhancing technologies that are out there that are important on the demand side of things. And a lot of legislators are putting in a lot of bills in this space. So the bottom line is there's a lot of action in the energy space, a lot of action on a lot of other topics in Tripoli, and so we're going to have our hands full, and I'll certainly take questions. That's kind of big picture, so thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to the fantastic, tremendous chair of our Senate Finance Committee, Senator Pam Beidle.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us get our message out to our constituents. The Maryland legislature has been very concerned about the cost of prescription drugs, and Maryland created the first prescription drug affordability board in the country, and this year will be the first state to identify 2 prescriptions with upper payment limits, and it will be Ozempic and Trulicity, which we're waiting for the final decision. If this works out for us on the upper payment limit for our commercial payers, we'll then begin to add it to all commercial payers. First, it's going to be state plans, and then it'll be all commercial players. During the interim, I spent a great deal of time working with the Secretary of Health, the Maryland Insurance Administration, the HSCRC, and the healthcare changes as we work on ahead. So we have to work with a lot of other committees and the federal government, as does Senator Feldman, as he talked about that. But the federal government made significant changes in our total cost of care model, and so now we're working for those changes in our Medicare payments, and along with changes in the H.R. 1 to Medicaid that could be devastating for our state. The health department's working on a program to make redetermination easier, and our constituents will need to requalify every 6 months. That, along with the new work requirements, will add stress to our process here in Maryland. The regulatory work group created by the governor will continue to monitor the implementation of the AHEAD model, And the committee has been and will continue to work closely with all our departments and the HSCRC, as well as the Hospital Association. It's so important that we work together because so many organizations are affected by these changes in the HEAD model and Medicare and Medicaid. As you all probably know, finance doesn't just do health. We do a lot of business regulation, and so we're going to have legislation this year, of course, new liquor laws, cigar bars, advertising regulations with cannabis. Well, I'll be sponsoring legislation to license stores that sell electronic smoking devices, commonly known as ESDs. Currently, if they have a tobacconist license, it allows them to sell ESDs, and the ATFF feels like they need a little more control, and we need to know who's selling ESDs and what the products are. So this makes enforcement for them difficult, and the bill will make it easier. There will be no additional fee for those businesses that sell cigarettes and regular tobacco products, but those selling ESDs will need an additional license. Last session, the implementation date of the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program was delayed from July 1st, 2025 to January 1, 2027. And the committee is monitoring the development and the implementation of the program, working with the Department of Labor to address the logistics and economic challenges of the implementation. The Maryland Insurance Administration issued a work group report in December with findings and policy recommendations regarding rising premium costs for automobile insurance, and the committee heard that briefing yesterday. And then the Finance Committee is continuing to work on crypto issues, heat stress, and privacy concerns, as well as liquor regulations and economic development. So we're off to a busy start. Thank you all. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to introduce the wonderful Vice Chair of JPR, Jeff Wallstreicher. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Wallstreicher. It's my honor to serve as the Vice Chair of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. And it's even a greater honor to serve under the chairmanship of Senator Will Smith. The Senator and I have known each other more than half our lives. He grew up about 5 minutes from where I grew up. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. It's MLK week. His daughter is performing in an MLK performance, so I am pinch hitting today. The chairman and I have three top priorities for this legislative session. The first is affordability. My family hosts Shabbat dinner every Friday evening, as I will tonight, so I was doing some grocery shopping last evening. Grocery prices are too high. Power prices are too high, and I know it's the priority of this chamber to fight on behalf of our constituents to bring affordability policies back this year. The second thing is economic growth. The chairman and I both self-define as progressives, and that means we support government investments in our community. But we can't fund those investments unless we attract businesses and grow our economy to bring the revenue we need to make those investments. And so economic growth is a huge priority. And then the last is pushing back against a lawless Trump administration. And that's a lot of what we're going to be doing within the Judicial Proceedings Committee. And that's what we spent yesterday on. So yesterday we had some important hearings. You heard about them earlier. The first was to abolish the 287G agreements with ICE. And then the second yesterday was to ban law enforcement masking for day-to-day operations. For those of you who attended those hearings, you saw the best of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. The hearings were civil, they were thoughtful, they were nuanced, and they were focused on the law and the merits. And that's our goal for the duration of the legislative session, to repeat the incredible thoughtfulness that you saw during yesterday's hearing. Here's a preview of a few issues that will be coming before us going forward. The first is juvenile justice. The governor frequently says that accountability and rehabilitation are two sides of the same coin. I know the chairman and I believe that firmly. And so juvenile justice will be a core conversation in the Judicial Proceedings Committee this year. The second is housing. There are some important bills that will be coming before us, and we will review them as they come. But I know the chairman and I both feel strongly that even unintentionally, anything that impacts the supply and capacity of our housing market will receive close scrutiny, because ultimately the best way to lower prices for folks in Maryland when it comes to housing is to increase our supply and capacity. And the last is you'll see a piece of legislation from Delegate Lorick Charkoudian and myself called the No Kings Act. Under federal law, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is sometimes referred to as 42 U.S.C. 1983, Marylanders can sue Maryland officials in federal courts, but the converse is not true. Marylanders cannot sue federal officials in state courts. California is about to pass, and Illinois has passed, this concept. It's called Converse 1983. Governor Hochul included it in her priorities in New York, and we're going to consider it in the Judicial Proceedings Committee this year. Thank you so much. With that, I'll turn it over to the Chairman of the Senate Democratic Caucus, Senator Craig Zucker.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman. Good morning. It's an honor to be here with you today and really echo what you heard from my colleagues. There's a number of things that we should take away from this morning. One is that the Senate Democratic Caucus has never been more unified. Even with the pressure coming from the federal government that is cost Marylanders thousands and thousands of jobs, we're committed to ensuring that Maryland becomes more affordable by lowering energy prices, ensuring that people can put food on the table, all while growing the economy and investing in infrastructure. Part of that is going to be based on the policies that we're going to be considering this next legislative session, as well as the capital budget of the state of Maryland, where we'll be investing more than $6.2 billion in critical infrastructure, including transportation, higher ed, investing in community treasures, as well as putting 15,000 people or more back to work. It won't be easy combating the pressures from the Trump administration, but the team that you see with us today is helping to shape the future that we want to see. A future where every Marylander has an opportunity to succeed, and we've never been more unified on that message and in that mission. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all. Again, I think the theme that you heard was a very unified approach. We are focused intensely on affordability, growth, and protecting against a lawless Trump administration. You heard it from insurance prices to energy to housing, up and down in each of our committees in the first week. All of these topics are being dealt with and jumped on by the Maryland Senate. And so with that, let me open it up for questions.
Mr. President, I think maybe I'd like to start with redistricting. The House of Delegates is going to fast track mid-cycle congressional redistricting bill, introduce it today. It should be in rules on Monday. The governor and the minority leader of Congress had a press conference yesterday where they essentially pointed their finger at you and said, you are the lone person holding this up. Wanted to get your reaction to this fast track. And are you the lone person holding up democracy in Maryland?
Look, I appreciate their thoughts and advice. What I know is that the Maryland Senate's going to do what we do, is focus on the issues that are most important. I door knock every single weekend, and when I stand on people's doorsteps in my own district, and I know that's the case for all of the senators' districts, when you stand on their doorsteps and you ask what matters most to you, what are you concerned about? What they're talking about is the price of groceries. They're talking about their energy bills. They're talking about the cost of their rent or their mortgage. That's what's keeping Marylanders up at night, and that's what we have a responsibility and obligation to focus on, and that's where the Maryland Senate's going to place our time.
But there are some that say that this represents a moment that's an existential crisis for states like Maryland and for the nation, and that Maryland should stand up and be counted.
I think we are counted. I think we're doing the work of the people of Maryland every single day, and we have to focus. What we know is we've got a lot of issues right now. The world is uncertain, the world is crazy, and we have a limited amount of time and energy and focus, and we have to put it where it matters most. We got to close a $1.4 billion budget shortfall. We've got to focus on affordability. We've got to find a way to grow our economy, and we've got to pass policies that truly and actually protect Marylanders against Trump administration. So that's what we'll do.
I wanted to follow up on that, though. Two things. One, the governor and the House Speaker have made it clear that they want to see a vote on this. I know you've said that that is something that you're not entirely interested in. Given the pressure, are you concerned that we're going to see more pressure from Democrats across the country on you and your members to put this up for a vote?
I feel confident with where we are and where we stand. We have a job to do. We have to focus on delivering for Marylanders, and that's what we're going to do. We are going to make sure that every single policy that we are moving forward is focused on affordability, growing our economy, and ensuring that we are protecting with actual policies the impacts of a lawless Trump administration. So, I appreciate advice otherwise. we have a job to do to focus.
President Ferguson, following up on that, the work on all of these other issues that you've talked about, is that hampered at all by this disagreement with the governor, who clearly ratcheted up his rhetoric against you yesterday? Does that get in the way of doing the other work?
No.
How so?
Are you concerned?
How so? Can you describe a little more your relationship with the governor, where you disagree on this one very big topic, getting to work on the others? How are you working together?
Look, I think in any family where you believe in the same ideals, there's things that you're going to disagree about, and I think that that's the case here. We have a disagreement. We don't disagree on the fundamentals that what is happening to Maryland by this federal administration is unconscionable. Losing 25,000 federal jobs, the impact that we've had on research and development, the failure to give funds to Western Maryland when they were in their emergency state for flooding. There is no disagreement between our caucus and the executive administration and the House. We all agree that what is happening at the federal level is unconscionable. What we have to do, from our perspective, is focus on the things that will have that will make a true difference for Marylanders, and that will have an actual impact. And we know that we have the tools and ability to do that, particularly to make things more affordable, to make sure that we're growing our economy in sectors that need it, and to ensure that the policies that can protect against the harms that are being created on an everyday basis by the Trump administration.
On redistricting, will you allow a vote?
We are focused on the things that matter most for Marylanders. That's what we're going to focus our time on. And so, each week you heard from each one of these leaders the numerous issues that take priority of ensuring that insurance prices are not fleecing people, to make sure that prescription drug costs are not too high, to make sure that people can send their kids to great schools, that we're investing in infrastructure. This is what Marylanders care about, and that's where we have to focus our limited amount of time, and that's what will drive our decision-making.
Do you think the governor is being honest about the motivations behind this? He often says that this is about fairness in the state of Maryland, but yet we saw him on the Hill yesterday with the minority leader, and he continues to say that the leadership, then the party continues to say this is more about the midterm elections.
It's a question for the governor. All I can say is that I know that the Maryland Senate is unified, that Marylanders are feeling the pain of rising costs and a federal administration that has failed to deliver on any promise in their election, be it tariffs, be it starting wars in Venezuela, with attempting wars in Greenland. There is not a lot of focus at the federal level about the actual things that matter to people. And what the Maryland Senate believes is that we have to prioritize and deliver. We have to show Marylanders that we understand that they are feeling the frustration of affordability, that they are concerned about the future of growth in an ever more sophisticated economy, and that we have to take the practical, tangible efforts to put policies in place where the federal government is stepping on Maryland. We have to kick the boot off. And so that's our plan.
Relating to SB 245, I'm so sorry. Yesterday, it was brought up that Montgomery County has a bill before its council to establish a kind of uniform process. It seemed like the sheriffs were interested in, the Trust Act. Am I misquoting the president? It seemed like there was an interest among members of the committee in ensuring that there's a uniform process. Last year, this bill started out pretty clean, just trying to shut down 287G altogether, and then it was amended to the program that we have now, where it's 48-hour hold. Could you see this bill this year kind of morphing into a similar situation where 287G is ultimately abolished, but the state comes up with its own kind of system?
That doesn't appear to be the direction that the committee wants to move in. There's a sense in the committee that we want to move quickly, that it's time to pass this legislation, that the time for consideration has occurred, and now is time for a vote on that. At the local level, even if we pass this legislation, Montgomery County and the jurisdictions that currently have this program will continue to be able to put into force policies that reflect the values of those communities, that allow them to cooperate with ICE as they see fit. It was clear during the testimony yesterday that Montgomery County regularly cooperates with ICE according to their policy. As you indicate, they are going to codify that policy into their local law, and nothing about what we will do will prevent our locals from doing that.
Senator Augustine, on your SB 1 bill, if you step up to it.
Sure.
What authority does the state have to enforce that bill on feds? How are you going to make the feds not have face coverings?
As we talked about yesterday, the states do have the ability to have general laws that are enforceable at the state level. And what we do know is that they can also have that enforcement on federal entities, so long as they do not interrupt with the normal practice of them being able to do business. It's very clear that wearing masks is not an essential element. There's no tactical benefit. There is not a policy for that. It's simply an optional issue that's there for them. And so because of that, what we would be able to do as far as being able to pass legislation and law to ban it stands up to scrutiny.
And who would enforce it?
It would be enforced by local and state law enforcement who already have the responsibility and obligation to enforce our law.
Question for Chair Feldman. The budget as proposed pulls almost $400 million out of the C fund. And I wanted to get a sense from you about, this is not the first time that in the last 2 years that this money has been pulled. Get a sense of whether you have concern about that money being pulled, and should there be a plan that would put in place some kind of an effort to put that money back so that it is used to pay for things that environmentalists say that fund is there for?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are bills on that point. We'll have hearings about putting guardrails on CEF. I know that that's part of the governor's budget, taps that. Last year, we gave rebates back to the tune of $200 million to Maryland ratepayers out of that fund. I think this year there may be an attempt to do the same, at least maybe by the governor, maybe others. I think that's a legitimate debate, a legitimate discussion, and I'll just say that we do have bills attempting to achieve that, and we'll have a full-blown hearing on it.
You think there should be guardrails?
I think generally speaking, the ability to have flexibility, particularly in this climate on budgeting, I think is important. And so hamstringing a governor or even the legislative branch of government with a pretty sizable fund of money that can be deployed for, I think, a lot of important priorities of this chamber, for the governor, I think some more. So I would say flexibility in budgeting is important, and if you too tightly put constraints on that, I think that is problematic. That's my own personal view. I don't know where the votes are in the Senate or in the House, but that's just my general point of view. Flexibility is important. Again, particularly in a situation where we have a shortfall that we're trying to resolve.
On the ICE bills, both masking and 287G, have you spoken, I think this is a question for Mr. President, have you spoken with the governor? Do you know where he stands on those bills? Do you expect that they will get his signature if they pass?
We haven't specifically spoken on the topics. I know that he is, we've spoken on the concerns that we both share on the way that ICE has been enforcing in the state of Maryland and across the country. I think that there is without a doubt, a shared belief in the lacking of humanity in the approach that these federal agencies have demonstrated in the state of Maryland. I think the lack of transparency is something that we both share concerns. What happened in Glen Burnie, where we frankly heard now 4 different stories about how a specific arrest occurred. These are the exact types of things that we know undermine trust between law enforcement and the people that they serve. So I know we share all of those beliefs. I'm not sure exactly on the specific policies, and we'll see as we move forward with the process.
The governor said he wants more flexibility in terms of budget control, and he has gone on the record to say that he would favor getting rid of formulas and/or mandates. Any discussions underway this year about that?
Yeah, this year is probably not the year that we'll have the broader conversation around formulas. As I've noted previously, for decades, for 60 years, Maryland had a system where the legislature in the budgeting process only had the authority to cut. And the only way to have an impact would be to put in a formula that puts the amount of funds at the highest imaginable amount so that the legislature could cut it moving forward. And so that was the design of the budgeting system. And so that provided some level of predictability, but we always knew each year we had to balance the budget by cutting. Now, after Maryland voters passed question 1 and provided the authority both to appropriate and put funds towards specific programs and to cut, we have a different fundamental structure for how we budget in Maryland. And so in the next term, I would, there are lots of conversations about how we can rethink some of our basic assumptions about our formula-based system now that the authority for the legislature has shifted. And so that's a broader conversation that has lots of implications and will take a lot of detailed discussion and nuance. I don't think that this session is going to be the year that we're able to take that on. What I do know is that we're going to balance the budget, and we're still going to invest in the things that matter to Marylanders and invest to make sure that our economy is still moving.
We can do one more, guys. Go
With
ahead.
the budget, there are members of the DDA community who are relatively unsettled about the $150 million proposed cut. Do you foresee that being static as the Senate moves through its budgeting process? I don't know if any of the members of B&T would like to.
Well, I think if you look at the operating budget, and even the capital budget of the state of Maryland, it's like the beginning of a football game. It just got punted, and now we are receivers of it. So this is the beginning of really a back and forth and a cooperation with both the governor and the House of Delegates. But we're in the beginning part of session, and there'll be, it'll develop as time goes on. But again, the one thing that remains consistent is we're going to be doing what we can to look out for the best interests of Marylanders, regardless of what their differences or disabilities might be.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, President.
Thank you all. Stay safe this weekend. Snowmageddon, Snowvid 26. Yes, all right.